some of these other people are not indigenous to South Africa either. They came from someplace else, the same as the Dutch.
Dinesh, exactly. And to clarify that, we're looking at a gap in years of 120. It was 120 years before the Bantu, who were warring tribes themselves. And we have to think of the equator coming down to the Tropic of Capricorn. So we think of a southerly migration from Central Africa, and we see the arrival of whites at the very tip of Africa. And 120 years later, they happen to meet each other for the first time, apart from the Khoisan who were there. So yes, we have that as an issue. And then we have to look really further at, there is, at the time of the referendum, there was, and there still is, quite a strong respect level between the Zulus and the Afrikaner Boer farmer. And the Zulus are 25% of the population. And we're looking at, on the white population, I would say about 60% of the Boer farmer and the other 40% are British. Ultimately, everybody has to come to the table. If the Boer and the Zulu actually were to come to the table and say, hold on, the African National Congress has gone a little too far on this rhetoric. We need to calm down. We can't just genocide all the farmers and expect the country to survive. Then perhaps we would have a more even playing table. Somehow or other, this rhetoric that a white knight killed a Boer has to come to the fore. There has to be a discussion in the media in South Africa. There has to be a willingness on the side of the African National Congress to say, you know what, our country is worth more than this. We don't want to have this violence. We're going to take all the tourism out of the country. We're going to take all the farming production out of the country. And we're going to start going into a bit of a rabble. We're going to lose our government strength. Let's see what we can do. It has to get to that point.
Let me try out a sort of diagnosis on you and have you respond to this, if you will. I remember when apartheid first collapsed, Mandela came in. Many of us who were in our youth very critical of the ANC, we saw it as infiltrated with communists and left-wingers and bad guys. And nevertheless, tempered our criticism, pulled back because we thought, okay, well, here's this guy Mandela, and he appears to be a unifying force, a healing force. He's not calling for vendettas or vengeance. But it almost looks like the moment that Mandela himself faded from the scene, the kind of original impulses of the ANC came back to the forefront, and South Africa began to degenerate, if you will. Now, the Western media has not covered it, I think, for a couple of reasons. One is they don't want to make it seem like black people can't run a country. And so they've been very eager to kind of look the other way, downplay any accounts of vicious murders and so on that have been going on. But what are the prospects that the ANC, which does have power and appears to have had a fairly consistent hold of power for the past 25 years, what is the chance of convincing those guys not to enact the politics of vengeance, not to just say, hey, listen, I could grow my own food, but it's easier to go grab some other guy's farm. There's something kind of appealing in democratic politics where you can use the power of a majority just to take somebody else's stuff. What are the chances of convincing the ANC that's not a good way to go?
I think there are people in the ANC who would like to see that movement. But I don't quite know how one is going to be able to really negotiate with Julius Malema. You know, when President Trump showed that video in the White House of a stadium, and as President Trump said, well, it looks to me that's a stadium of 100,000 people and there's not an empty seat. That is a youth, a very powerful youth, military in there. If you think of every single person that goes into the military, when do they go into the military? They go in their late teens and early 20s. That's when they listen to what a militaristic voice would tell them and then obey it. You're still quite young, still fairly immature, so you don't really know exactly how the world works. You're still learning, but you do have the testosterone that can be motivated. It has to start with somebody opposing Julius Malema in his viewpoint, and that someone has not yet come to the fore. South Africa has to find someone in its midst, and actually within the African National Congress, they, within themselves, have to have a debate on, do we keep on supporting Julius Malema, or do we admonish his strides, which are only going to propagate genocide?
The administration has their sleeves rolled up in streamlining monumental moves right now, but it's difficult for them to take your personal finances into account when trying to fix the country. You have to do that, and that's why tens of thousands of Americans are buying gold now from Birch Gold. Here are some facts. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 30%. Debbie and I are pretty happy about that. Central banks are buying gold in large quantities. The Rio reset on the horizon, where BRICS nations are looking to unseat the US dollar as the global reserve. But you can find some peace of mind in gold. Birch Gold makes it easy to convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, or just buy some gold to store at home. Just text my name, Dinesh, to 989898. You'll get a free information kit from Birch Gold. There's no obligation, just useful information. Birch Gold has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, thousands of happy customers. Diversify your savings today. Get started. Text the word Dinesh to 989898.